Hello and welcome back to Chaotic Insights, where I break down the TV show Chaotic, and today we'll be talking about episode 38, Big Time. So grab a snack, start your laundry, and we'll dive right in. Episode summary: Kaz is playing a match as Kaor in Everrain, and he defeats a Danian player. In his next battle, the Danian player uses Volash, a Mandiblor, with air attacks. And what? Flies? It's like a bug with wings, right? And so this match inspires Sarah to get a Volash scan because she learns of a secret elevator shaft in Mount Pillar that could take her up. She transports to Mount Pillar and climbs up the elevator shaft. Then we see a Mopedian with nefarious intentions sneak into Mount Pillar and head for the Queen using the same passageway. Sarah discovers the Mopedian and tries to help the Danians, and she is rewarded by getting to meet the Queen, and she almost gets a scan of the Queen, but she gets a scan of one of the cool guards instead. Analysis. This episode is presented through Kaz's match as the A-plot, but quickly Sarah's storyline becomes like the main focus. And so it's kind of half and half, but they reserve the resolution for like Kaz's storyline. They reserve a resolution for that, but we end with Sarah's. So Kaz's match is kind of the hook and inspires Sarah to go on her journey, right? An inciting incident, if you will. Whereas this is really a Sarah episode. And if you listen to Sarah's dialogue in this episode, it's kind of funny because she really only speaks to move the plot along or to explain the circumstances, which I understand that is the point of dialogue, is to move the plot along or explain circumstances. But like, when the elevator shaft is revealed, Sarah goes, I didn't know that was there. Or when she gets to Mount Pillar, she's by herself, right? And so when you're by yourself, you don't really talk out loud, especially when you're sneaking around. But instead of having a voiceover, she just talks out loud to clue us into what she's thinking and what she's doing and to help move forward the story. Now, this episode contains like a full story arc. We get Sarah trying to get a scan, and we get her discovering the intruder, helping defeat the intruder, getting rewarded, right? And it's not like this deep emotional arc, but we do see a change. We see growth over time. But this episode, to me, is more of a foundational episode for things that come later. However, like the cliffhanger, and I don't even want to call it a cliffhanger, but we get this ambiguous ending that alludes to something more dark and sinister. Like the queen is like, and now you'll become one of us. And we don't know what that means. And it's such a cool ending. And I like when these episodes end kind of on those ambiguous ways that it inspires you to think, right? This episode, it ends and it leaves you with more questions than answers. What happens to that Mopedian? And I think that's really what strong writing does. Like, you want art to inspire you to ask questions. And that's what this episode does. And then, like, later when we found out what does happen, that's spooky ooky, and I very much look forward to talking about it. But moving on to lore, we learn a lot about the Danians in this episode. They're understaffed, so they cut back on guard shifts, and usually they don't do that, but they use that as justification on why the Mopedian intruder is able to break in easily, right? The Mopedian intruder is able to break in because they're understaffed, so they cut back on guards. And when I was watching this, I was like, wasn't there a joke about that in like episode 8 about the Mandiblor striking? But it wasn't. It was a stick it to the Mandiblor joke. But we in this episode we learn about rumblings of a strike, which does give us insight on the workforce of the Danians, and they also mention squad leaders, which introduces us further to the authority chain. So at the bottom is your average worker, and these workers have squad leaders, and then the squad leaders report to the Mandiblors, and the Mandiblors report to the Queen, right? And so we get this hierarchy. And so if the average workers are like rumbling and planning on a strike, they would plan to, I don't know, disrupt that system somehow. It's some insight on, the current state of the Union in Mount Pillar. We also get to learn more about their security system, right? Mostly their security system is guards, but they also have like secrets. They have secret elevators, they have secret passages, they have secret gear that's stashed, like the spectral viewers, right? And so having deep insight on Mount Pillar really gives you an advantage to using that location. If you know about the secret passages, if you know where the stashed gear is, right? It just gives you a leg up. And so all of the Danians are intimately aware of the place that they live, and so that gives them a huge advantage over any intruder, right? This Mopedian, maybe he knows that there's an elevator shaft, but he doesn't know that there's stashed gear. You know, it's like one of those things. So in order to be effective in Mount Pillar, you really need to know all the ins and outs, which makes a planned attack from the Mopedians all the more impressive, especially that he knew about this secret passage. And also, it effectively keeps chaotic players out, pretty much. Like, not out, but it keeps them at bay, right? The chaotic players didn't know about the elevator shaft. They don't know how to get up to the queen. That's difficult to do. There's also guards. It's hard to get in the first place if you don't have a scan of the inside. So all of these are kind of, they're great for creatures, but they're also working at keeping chaotic players at bay. Now, in lore, I also have written down sound effects means locked out from calling into a drum match. I don't know if this is new information, but there was a sound effect when, you get locked out from calling into a match. And I think that makes sense. Like there's a window of opportunity for consultation and strategy and outside opinions, but there's also a point in a match where you just got to play the match and like you can't be on the phone. So, let's introduce that. On to fun facts and other lore. My favorite joke of the episode is, of course, it's like a bug that flies, which is normal. That's my favorite joke of the episode. My other fun fact and other note is I think in this episode they call the Mopedian Skulk. Specifically at the end of the episode when Sarah is talking to her friends at Chaotic. They're like, I wonder what happened to Skulk. But if we're matching up this Mopedian with the cards, this Mopedian is Como, and of course, Como has different variations of his card that we'll talk about more when the next episode that deals with this topic comes. But that's just great storytelling through the cards of what happens. So there is some discontinuity between if his name is Skulk, if his name is Como in this episode, but it is Como, right? I think maybe this is just an instance where they didn't have the name of the creature yet, and the TV show had to write something. But also, Sarah says it, and maybe she got it wrong. Maybe Como has a twin, or maybe Como has like a brother who looks suspiciously like him, and Sarah got them confused. Those are all possible. Let's talk about the final thoughts of this episode. I like this episode. Now, is it my favorite episode? Not necessarily, but I think it's solid. I think we get unique insight into the Danians, and I also think this is really the only time we get to interact with the Queen, I believe, especially in this animation style. This is the only time we get to interact with the Queen. And I think the ending is haunting, and I love the ambiguity of the ending. It leaves you with more questions than answers. And I think this episode holds a dear place in my heart for two reasons. One, it's a Sarah episode, and I love my girl Sarah. But two, the Danian Queen. So me and Alexia, the Danian Queen, we go back. We have a special connection just because my favorite Easter growing up, and maybe the only one I remember, who's to say, but I got the Danian Queen card in my Easter basket, and I'm pretty sure she was my first ultra rare card. If she wasn't my first ultra rare card, she was my first ultra rare creature card for sure. And I didn't pull her from a pack, but she was prominently displayed in that Easter basket. And I just like, that's a memory that I'll hold on to. And I love her. She's my ultra rare card, the Danian Queen. And so we're connected. And getting to see her in this episode, like that's my girl. So you gotta love the episode because of that. I think it's funny how casual Sarah is to the Danian Queen at the end of the episode. Like with that, it's a decent episode. It's introducing some concepts. We get a match. It's a fun time. Yeah, that's what I have to say about this episode. So if you have any insight, let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.